Keynote speaker coming all the way from Palestine, Feyrouz Sharqawi. Feyrouz is a consultant to civil society organizations and the agenda director at Paltrek, with her experience as the co-founder and former director at Grassroots Al-Quds. She offers valuable analysis and insight on the situation in Palestine with a focus on Jerusalem. She remains committed to supporting the advancement of Palestinian rights through her work. Please give another applause to welcome Feyrouz.
Hi, shukran, marhaba. I am both honored and pleased to be here today. Thank you, Karama, for the invitation and all of the partners for organizing this. If I had known Yasmin was going to be this great, I would have requested to speak before her. Good job. And in the few minutes I have today, I would like to share with you, of course, news and updates about Palestine and what's happening there, but also not only the news about occupation and colonization, but also the news of resistance and steadfastness. You know, we're here to commemorate 75 years of the Nakba, but this is not just a story of a catastrophe that happened in 1948. It's not just the catastrophe of almost 1 million Palestinians displaced, uprooted, losing their lands and becoming refugees, but it's also the story of ongoing occupation and colonization of Palestine. Fragmented, the different parts of Palestine, communities living in these different parts face different challenges, different colonial policies. Colonization in Palestine manifests in different ways. In 1948 occupied lands, there is first of all the disconnect from the rest of the Palestinian people and the ongoing brainwashing that you are not Palestinian, you don't belong to the Palestinian people, you are just a minority in the state of Israel, you are citizens. Your ceiling of demands should be equality. Palestinians in 48 lands, they don't only fight to keep their identity and sense of belonging, but also they are losing land. Our land is being confiscated, our homes are being demolished, our schools are being controlled by the Israeli occupation Ministry of Education. And Palestinians in 48 nowadays, for the last few years, have also been facing crime and lawlessness that is supported by the occupation authorities, not only allowed or neglected, but also supported, enabled by them as a tool of control. Palestinians in 1948 lands are also facing incarceration, being detained and arrested and jailed, not only for resisting, but also for protesting. Palestinian political activists in 48 lands are prosecuted, they are terrorized, in order not to speak up. That part of the story is also the story of the western side of occupied Jerusalem. Ethnically cleansed in 1948, the west side of Jerusalem, the western part of occupied Jerusalem, still waits for the refugees to go back to Talbiye and Al-Qatamon and Al-Baqa and other neighborhoods and villages. In Jerusalem itself, in the eastern side of Jerusalem, Palestinians face displacement, systematic displacement. Policies that have been designed and have been implemented since 1967, aiming at one main goal: displacing and uprooting as many Palestinians as possible from Jerusalem. These Palestinians have their legal status revoked, what we call the Jerusalem ID. A Palestinian in Jerusalem is considered an immigrant to their own hometown. And if they leave for a certain amount of time, if they move to live even as close as Bethlehem and Ramallah, they risk not being allowed back in the city. 15,000 Palestinians have lost their Jerusalem ID, their right to live in their own hometown, since 1967. Palestinians in Jerusalem have their lands confiscated as well. Lands taken away, preventing us from the space we need to exist and naturally grow in order to build colonies on our lands, to build colonial roads, to build military bases. Our lands are confiscated and simply declared as green zones national parks. Palestine is the place where trees uproot people. Many of these trees funded by generous Zionist people in the US, for example. In Jerusalem, our identity is under attack as well. Within the education system, the Israeli colonial authorities control our education system. They condition budgets that schools need in order to survive with the use of the adoption of the Israeli curriculum. Use our curriculum, we'll give you the necessary budgets. If you don't, no money for you. And the schools who resist and refuse to adopt the Israeli curriculum don't get away with it. It's not just the money. Our books are taken away, our Palestinian books are taken away, they are censored. Whatever the colonizer feels is a threat or a danger is erased from our books. They then are reprinted and distributed to Palestinian schools. In these books, we are told that 48 land is not ours. In these books, we are told that we are disconnected from the rest of the Arab world. In these books, our flags are a crime, and the word Palestine is a crime. And it is very dangerous controlling the education system, both in 48 and in Jerusalem schools. In Jerusalem also, there is the economic factor. Everywhere there is the economic factor. In Jerusalem, the Palestinian economy is being suffocated. You know, I was born in 1948 lands in al-Fahim, but I went to study in Jerusalem in the year 2000. And the Jerusalem I saw then is very different from the Jerusalem of today. The city is dying. The economy is dying. Thousands of Palestinian businesses closed down since the construction of the annexation and expansion wall in the mid-2000s. And poverty rates in Jerusalem are very high. Almost 80% of the Palestinians in Jerusalem live below the official poverty line. These are all tools to displace Palestinians. When there is no land for us to build new homes, crucial and necessary, when there are not enough schools, not enough hospitals, when there is prosecution, when there is aggression and violence in the street all the time. The army and the police, the occupation army and police, they raid our neighborhoods morning and night, and they arrest Palestinians. Hundreds of Palestinians from Jerusalem are in Israeli jails as we speak. And all of these are tools that the Israeli colonial regime has made up in order to have a Israeli-only, Jewish-only Jerusalem. In the West Bank, there is the military occupation. There is an army that kills and arrests Palestinians on a daily basis. There are colonies, settlements built on Palestinian confiscated lands. There are settler roads connecting these colonies, many of which Palestinian cars cannot drive on. The segregation, the apartheid that we speak about happening in Palestine is not the only thing that's happening there. It is a tool, a colonial tool. It is a manifestation of settler colonialism. Let's not forget the Gaza Strip. Under siege for so long, it has become not only the biggest open-air prison in the world, but also almost an unlivable place, where Palestinians cannot go in and out freely. Many Palestinians are deprived of not just the basic need to communicate and be in touch with family members and with the homeland they belong to. Let's also not forget that 80% of the population of the Gaza Strip are Nakba refugees. But they are also deprived medical care and basic resources. And on top of all of that, every few years, there is an assault, a new war on Gaza. There are massacres, bombing, fear. And let's not forget about the diaspora. where the colonial manifestation is the continuous ban from having a normal, natural relationship with the homeland. Not only the right to return for good, but also the right to visit. I have so many friends in the US and in European countries and many places around the world that are dying to come and walk down the streets of Jerusalem. These are all different shapes and colors of one settler colonialist project that manifests in many different ways. And the fragmentation, the divide and conquer policy, is a tool where our colonizer thinks is effective to keep us weak, under control. But this is not where I want to finish my word today. I also want to speak a little bit about how we resist this colonization. Especially today in 2023, we have been living for the last 2 years a great moment in Palestine. It started in the Unity Intifada, the uprising, the dignity uprising, Habbat al-Karameh of 2021. It had been very long since all of Palestine rose together. Resistance existed all the time, in 48 lands, in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, in Gaza, and also here. But in 2021, we all went to the streets together. From Sheikh Jarrah to Lid, to Haifa, to Al-Fahim, to Gaza, to Ramallah, to Jenin, excuse me, everyone went to the streets. And of course, there were 2 months where we were all together, resisting and fighting, and things started to calm down. But I'm here to say that it's not quiet in Palestine. Resistance continues. We resist on different levels. First of all, we protest. We use non-violence resistance. We protest, we organize demonstrations, we go to the streets, and we demand. We also organize our communities. And for those who don't know, examples of such organizing were witnessed in 2021, when Palestinians from 48 lands were coming to Sheikh Jarrah to stand up with the 6 families that were fighting and resisting expulsion from their homes. We witnessed it when Palestinians from Jerusalem were carrying food to the families in Al-Lid and Yafa being under curfew during that uprising. We witnessed it when Palestinians went to the confrontation points, to the checkpoints, to confront with the Israeli occupation army as support to the Palestinians in Jerusalem and 48 lands. We witnessed it when the alarms went off, when rockets started flying from Gaza to 48 lands as a support by Gaza to Jerusalem, to Jerusalemites, and to Palestinians everywhere around Palestine. So we continue in Palestine to organize our communities. We are aware that there is the occupation on the one hand. There is our own political leadership that is not doing its job. There is international aid systems, NGOs and donor countries who are yet another layer of colonization. They're not helping us free ourselves and liberate our land. They are part of the problem, keeping us dependent, keeping us in line, controlling what we say and what we don't. So we continue back home to build those bridges between 48 lands and 67 lands and the diaspora. We continue to create initiatives, resisting initiatives. It can be theater, and it can be organic agriculture, and many other types of initiatives that are rising up in masses in Palestine today. All aware that it's up to us to free Palestine, and that it is our responsibility, first and foremost. Thank you. Thank you. And let's not also forget the resistance, the Lion's Den, Arin al-Usud, as one name. Yes, respect to them. As one name that is not only known by every Palestinian in occupied Palestine today, but also supported by most Palestinians today. Offering a new hope. After our political parties have failed us, after political change was not happening, these youth took arms despite the control, despite the very strict control over the West Bank, and they resist the occupation. And whether it is non-violent protests, whether it is community organizing or armed resistance, these are all legitimate tools of resistance that we have as Palestinians. Thanks. And I would like to finish with addressing, so what can you all do? Because to me, as a community organizer in Palestine, I know what I have to do. I know that I have to connect and keep connecting my family in Al-Fahim to my friends in Jerusalem, to my neighbors in Ramallah. I know that I have to be there with any grassroots initiative that is resisting and defying colonization. But then the question is, what do we do here in the US? And you know, as Palestinians, I say connect, build those bridges with people you know, with organizations you like and follow, and support them. Get informed about what's happening, and organize. Organize locally as you support home. Educate people around you about what's happening. And to our allies in the room, I say, show solidarity. But in the true sense of solidarity, not as charity, but as awareness and total acknowledgement that it is your taxpayer money that is making this possible, and that it is your responsibility also to speak to your uncles, to speak to your neighbors, to write to your officials and representatives, and to protest and say, not in my name and not with my money do you support the ongoing of crime being committed against Palestinians. Thank you. I'll finish here, but I'll invite everyone, if you'd like, I'll be here when we are done. I can share with you names of organizations and websites that you can follow, organizations that you can support, and just keep connected to Palestine. Thank you very much.